So the Nintendo Direct is a couple of days old now, and people are starting to settle on a narrative or attempt to settle on a narrative. They're trying to come up with something to say about like this showcase, this demonstration of what we can expect to see from Nintendo Switch in the next couple of years. And one of the really funny narratives, one of the really interesting ones, is the idea that Switch is going to be replaced because, ooh, they haven't shown off anything good. They didn't show off any big games. Even though we just had a Nintendo Direct in June, even though we have an entire lineup for the next 6 months, the narrative now is that like, oh, they're gonna show the Switch 2 off in 2024. Like Mario Wonder will be the last big game for Switch. Like completely ignoring the narrative this year, early this year, that like Tears of the Kingdom would be the last major game on Switch, and that like immediately they would like move over to Switch 2, right? After that game came out, and instead, what happened instead? We got Pikmin 4, we got Mario Wonder, we got like everything else coming out at the end of the year. Like we have a loaded 6 month period, up until like March, and by that point, we're just gonna get another direct, right? Like it's appalling how the narrative keeps like pushing back the inevitable release date for the Switch 2. Like, oh man, don't get excited for the Switch now because the new one is on the way. Like, yeah, forget all these other great games. Forget Unicorn Overlord. Forget Princess Peach Showtime. Forget like another Code R. Forget all of this. Like we are going to get like Metroid Prime 4 on Switch 2 because ooh, that hasn't been shown off in a while. Never mind that they could like probably announce that thing like at any time, right? Like never mind that never mind that like Bayonetta 3 went through like a similar development cycle, like, and still launched on Switch, right? Like, never mind that. Like, it goes against the narrative, right? Like any excuse or justification these people can find to like pretend that Switch 2, like the sequel to Nintendo Switch, like that the Switch 2 is on the horizon, they'll take it. Like I saw people going into this direct talking about Switch 2, like not talking about the actual games that they could announce and talk about. Talk about the stuff we knew they would talk about, like Splatoon 3, Mario Wonder, uh, the possibility of like Mario RPG. Like, yeah, yeah. Let's not talk about that. Let's talk about the Switch 2. Let's talk about a piece of hardware we don't know anything about yet. Never mind that never mind that there's no evidence for this thing. Never mind that like Nintendo like has specifically given a time frame for when we can expect like Switch 2. Like let's ignore the official statements from like Furukawa and like what they've told investors. Like, no, the Switch 2 is coming out next year. And like, I'm getting tired every single direct of people like talking about this because it is so far removed from where we're at right now. Like, it's not really worth talking about, right? Because too many games are coming out that need to be talked about that these people are just ignoring because, oh man, Switch 2, like Splatoon 3 DLC looks great. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe just finished up. Like you have all of these great games on Switch, all of this great stuff to look forward to, right? And everybody is doing their best to ignore them. Like, come up with weird excuses and justifications. Like the big thing this showcase was like the remake thing, right? Like everyone's complaining about the Mario remakes. Well, completely forgetting that the Mario movie just came out. So it actually makes a lot of sense to put out a lot of Mario content. In fact, like this time last year, we got a lot of people like Nintendo Land, that guy. Like there was a narrative that they weren't putting out enough Mario content, right? Like, ooh, is this a sign that the Switch is on its last legs? Like, same thing, right? Like people forget last year in September, we had the Farming Direct. That's right. The Farming Direct was last year, September, right? Around like the same at the same time, right? We had the farming direct, and a lot of people were saying the same things then. That like, oh, this is evidence that the that Switch is on the way out, right? And it's not. Like even if the Switch 2 comes out in 2024, like uh, 2 years removed from like the farming direct when people said that, and that's like uh, people have been saying this incessantly for like years now, and like all they can do is just bleed on about like how old the Switch hardware is, while like refusing to admit that it's extremely popular and that like people are still regularly playing games on it. Like my opinion is that they don't need to put out new hardware. Like I think it is completely unnecessary, right? Like I think the Switch is perfectly good at what it does. It fulfills its niche, and people are still buying games for it. They're still getting hyped for it. They're still like excited for these games. So why would you release a new piece of hardware like now? It doesn't make any sense. Now, I think like the issue is that like Switch is so popular that it's eclipsing the PS5 and the Series X, which is why YouTubers who are all shills, like all of these people who like make their living like promoting really terrible AAA games like Starfield, like Final Fantasy 16, like Street Fighter 6, like uh what else came out? What's come out recently? Baldur's Gate 3. Like all of these people who came out with like, claiming these games were the best ever, like they all got like overshadowed by like random Nintendo games. Like it's kind of embarrassing, looking back and like seeing how these same people were like downplaying Tears of the Kingdom, saying it wasn't going to be successful, saying it was just a rehash, saying it was just going to be the same thing again. And then what happens? It becomes game of the year. It sells like 20 million copies in 2 months. It becomes like this huge, huge thing for Nintendo, and nobody wants to admit it. Like even now, you don't see these people admit that this game outperformed Elden Ring, one of the most overhyped, shilled products I've ever seen in my life. Like you don't see anyone besides myself talk about that, right? You don't talk about how impressive of an accomplishment that is. That Nintendo took on the entire gaming industry and won, right? And they're still winning, right? To the point where I I don't even really consider, getting a PlayStation, getting an Xbox, getting a PC, getting like starting gaming on tablet. Like that all of my games, all of the best games are available on Nintendo platforms. And anyone who is serious about the hobby understands that. Like when all you can do is talk about hardware power and like emulation and pirating games and like uh stuff like that, like you're kind of missing like the point. Like you're kind of missing what makes gaming appealing to people, right? You're missing like the entire what draws people in, and that is the games. Like I guarantee you that Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door is going to be well received, going to be like a huge deal, and I think going to introduced an entire new generation of people to Paper Mario, like to this classic GameCube RPG. And like the GameCube was a console that was heavily downplayed by the media. I'm sure the Thousand Year Door didn't get like glowing reviews. Like I'm sure that like people tried calling it kiddie or not all that great. And over the past 20 years, it's become a major cult classic. And like we're going to see that happen with a lot of other games, right? Like it's crazy to me to think that like Trace Memory is coming back. Like it's crazy to me to think that like Mario versus DK is getting a second chance at life. It's crazy to me to think that like Super Mario RPG is coming out, right? The fact that like anybody is complaining about these games or using them as evidence that Nintendo is dying or Nintendo is about to replace the Switch is just laughable to me. Like I think the fact that people are so excited for these products like really just shows you just how strong Nintendo's brand is. And I feel more and more that like the YouTubers, like they don't really understand any of that. Like it's crazy to me to see how many people like downplay Detective Pikachu, like, oh, I'm not interested in this. But like it's just like you really get this impression that they just make these like that they'll just like complain about everything, right? Like no matter what it is, no matter like how high budget, no matter how much it looks. Like I saw a lot of people like try to say that like Detective Pikachu looked bad. You know, like it's such a laughable concept. It's one of the best looking Pokemon games ever, right? Like I love the way that game looks and its animation and like the way it utilizes Pokemon and its mysteries. Like I love Detective Pikachu, right? And it's so weird seeing like the Nintendo community, talk down about that game, talk down about Japanese RPGs, like ignore like really good games, like another Code R, like Unicorn Overlord, like F-Zero 99. Like I've seen so many people like just attack these games in the most embarrassing way possible. And it really needs to stop. It really does. I don't. This was a pretty solid direct. I don't want to say it was like a great one, but you have to like keep in mind that we just got a direct in June, right? We got a direct in June, and we're getting one now. And I think last year we didn't get one in June, right? I think they skipped it, like, and they just had like two directs that year. Like, you don't have three directs in a year if your console is like on the way out. Okay, it's just not gonna happen, right? I think Nintendo Switch 2 is I think Nintendo Switch is dominant in the industry. I think it's like a market leader. I think everyone like really appreciates it. I think it has like a really good it hasn't even had its first price cut yet. And these guys are like seriously trying to say that this thing is like gonna be replaced like imminently. It is embarrassing. Okay, like it is ridiculous how many people like keep up want to keep up this farce that 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 the Switch is on the way out. No, like if anything, this direct kind of emphasizes the opposite. That like they're still putting out like high products, like high quality new products. They have a lot of things on the horizon, but like it was all like a lot of it was like geared towards the first quarter of next year, right? Stuff where they're putting out stuff that's more experimental, like January isn't a big month for them. like like I don't think we've traditionally gotten a lot of big announcements out of these September directs, right? Like I keep making comparisons to the farming direct, but I think that's a really good example of what I'm talking about. Like we got a lot of good products shown off here, and I'm perfectly excited by that. I was perfectly happy by the direct. Misgivings aside, with like some of the things about I saw with the Thousand Year Door, like when all is said and done, like I was overall very pleased with the direct, and I'm very excited about the next 5 years of Nintendo Switch. I cannot wait to see what Nintendo puts out next.